We have Tammy, we've got Katie, and we've got Jim here so far. So today we're going to kind of talk about working with buyers in today's market, which is a totally different market. So Jim, you've been around for a while, right?
A
little bit.
I think Katie's the expert, though.
But just the difference of the market, of being in the market over time, that there's a pretty normal market, even if it's a buyer-seller market. It's, it might be that you might get multiple offers once in a while. Would you agree that our market right now is different than anything we really had, except for the top of the bubble?
What's the top of the bubble?
Oh, no, it's actually like 04, 05.
Okay. I think I was here then.
Oh,
I think about 12 years.
okay.
I think I must have missed that.
So,
But yes, it's very strange right now.
yeah, it's very different.
And I have one of the listing, and I got 2 people that really wanted it, and it gets a little ugly, They start sort of throwing stuff around. And,
Yeah.
Why is that person getting it?
Yeah. Tammy, can you hear as well? Can you hear Jim talking?
I can't hear Jim.
Okay, so we'll talk loud, okay? So Jim was just saying that he had a listing and he had 2 buyers that really want it. It can get a little ugly. So we're going to talk about, first of all, us getting ready to work with buyers in this market because it's pretty challenging. And then Katie, have you run into any differences or challenges or road bumps that you want to address? And you've got to talk really loud. Loud for Tammy.
Well, how the buyer's going to purchase the home, whether it be cash or financing, really makes a huge difference in this market.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Because you're going up against multiple offers, and it's a seller's market, so the seller knows that he or she can get exactly what she wants. So a lot of the buyers that are financing are losing out because the seller is choosing cash over the financing because there's less contingencies and they don't have to worry about an appraisal.
Right, you're just getting shut out.
So it is difficult when you're working with a buyer that is financing, but you just need to explain to them up front the market and that it may take a little longer for them to find a home.
That's one of the things we're going to talk about is having that conversation with that buyer that you're working with. Tammy, have you had any experience that you want to share?
No, my first was a piece of vacant land, and I haven't had, and it was for the seller. I carried the seller side, but I did when I left the office this morning. I went to Walmart there in Inglewood, and I was handing out. Well, I wasn't actually handing them out. I was putting them in the windshields, the Red Day flyers, and I found a couple that want to buy a home.
Woohoo!
Yeah, so I potentially have someone. He gave me his name, his email, his phone number. They're looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a pool. And I also been working with trying to get this for sale by owner to let me do his home. So I'm really excited because this is what they're looking for. So I might be able to put the 2 together. So this will be my first house.
That's awesome. So we're going to talk about conversations with buyers and talking about expectations, and really where we drill down even more on the consultation. So one of the things that Blake asked me, would I teach a class? I said, sure. I said, what I'd like to do is kind of talk about the difference of working with buyers and transactions in this market. It's so bizarrely different that you have to be really prepared and kind of have your ducks in a row and have those conversations in a meaningful way with your buyers up front. So we're going to kind of talk about that. So the first thing I'm always about, and Tammy, this is great, is your lead source. When you work with someone, track where they come from. Always write on your piece of paper that you're tracking or what you put online. Where did you find that person? So this was putting flyers on cars in Walmart. So you always want to say, what activity got that person to talk to me? Because at the end of the year, you should be having every transaction, where did that person come from? And look to see how many came from this money came from that. So you always track your lead. And then you document it because monthly you want to look at it, and then end of year you want to look at that. And then this is talking about preparing to be a real estate professional, not an order taker. In this market where it's easy to have buyers, not as easy to have sellers, realtors can work with buyers and be order takers, but not come to fulfillment because they don't know how to close a transaction. This is where the professional that goes to classes, learns the scripts, learns the conversations to have, is able to get the listings and able to close a buyer and not spin your wheels with buyers. Right now is the time that you could spend lots of time with buyers and never get it closed. And they're frustrated, you're frustrated, and they blame you because they can't get a house, right? So you don't want to, your time has value. We want to have you putting time toward that return. So the first thing that I always talk about is the buyer consultation. When you're talking to that buyer, so Tammy's got someone she's talking, great, she's got the good news is I was waiting for that. She got the name, she got the email address, I was waiting for the phone number, and you got it. So very important to get that phone number. If they're just willing to give you an email, are they committed to you? Because they can ignore your emails. And so one of the conversations would be, so I could communicate with you quickly if the right property comes up, what is your phone number? I don't say, may I have your phone number, or give me your phone number, please. What's the value to them to give up their privacy of their phone number? If I'm able to deliver what you want, we need to go see it that day. So what is your phone number? And you get that. So you need to be able to say something to validate and have a reason to go through. And this is where you want to have that conversation with them. I'm always thinking about the buyer consultation. This is where you really either meet with them in person, or you meet on FaceTime, or you meet on the phone. And you have your computer open and you ask those questions. I just had someone call me and say, when you know, if you find the right thing, well, what is that right thing? Oh, well, it'd be a 3-bedroom. Well, would a 2-bedroom be okay? What would you use a 3-bedroom for? And so that's the drilling down of asking those questions, because who knows what the right one is? They don't even know until you go through that process with them. You want to understand the time frame. You want to ask the questions. So is your goal to buy something soon? Oh yeah, if you hear that answer, it doesn't really matter. I always do the extreme. I said, so if we found it in the next couple of months, or we found it a year from now would be good. And so notice I do it kind of a year from now would be good. It's not demanding, but they go, well, not a year. Oh, okay. So what would work for you? When do you want to be here? And so you go back, because if you give those extremes, you're going to say, well, I don't have to buy. Or people say, I don't have to sell. So even on the sell side, I'll say, for example, under for sale by owners. So it doesn't matter whether you sell this in April and May, or you're okay after next winter. Not then. Oh, so tell me where you're going. So this is where you want to get in those conversations. Same thing with that buyer. So where are you coming from? Will this be a second home or a year-round home? And then you want to ask, oh, are you selling something somewhere else? And you want to ask that first, because what's that a lead into? Their time frame, but their money. Because I'm asking them, do they have something to sell first? Because what am I asking? Where's the money coming from? That's a nice way of saying that. Do you have to sell your house in order to buy a house? So that's kind of the lead and nice way of saying, so, oh, so where is that other house? If they say, well, yeah, so where is that house? You go into Ohio, okay? So, oh, is that currently on the market now? So you're going a little bit deeper because you want to find out, well, it's not on the market, but they want to buy, and they need that money to buy. They're not ready to do something, but they don't understand the steps yet. They have to learn it from a professional realtor to help them figure out what that time frame is. So we want to look at, what is that time frame? Are you using the funds from that? Because sometimes what are they wanting to do? Well, yeah, when I find the right house, they're thinking I'll put an offer on contingent upon the sale of mine, then I'll put mine on the market. It's going to sell really fast. Is any homeowner in Florida willing to look at an offer contingent upon a sale, either that's listed and not sold yet, or that's not even listed yet? No one in this sphere. So even if it's under contract and it's contingent upon, we're having a difficulty with that right now. So then we find out, are they going to be buying? And that's the next question. This was always the toughest question for me because I thought it was so offensive. You know, so will you be buying cash or will you be getting a mortgage on this home? I found that I was so uncomfortable doing that and saying that. But bottom line is you need to understand, what is that? What are you looking at that? And so they go, oh, we'll get a mortgage. Okay, great. Have you gone through the process of pre-approval yet? So this is where you're drilling down and understanding, are they ready? Oh, well, yeah, but we're good. We got lots of money. And I hear that. Well, that's great. Let me tell you how real estate works in Florida. No one is even going to look at your offer without either cash, proof of cash sitting there, or your pre-approval letter. So if we found the right property, the dream property tomorrow, they wouldn't even look at our offer. And I do this silent thing. What am I doing? I'm stating it in a really powerful way. They're not even going to look at it. So then usually if it's a couple, one person of that couple looks at the other and goes, oh, we need to do that. So you're starting that process of really making sure they're pre-approved. And we're going to get in a discussion about cash versus financing, but we're not going to do it yet because what do we want to do? We want to capture their information. We want to find out their time frame. We want to find out what they want, where they want it, how much money. And we want them committed to us. They want us to see, boy, this person's bringing value to me. They know what they're talking about. We're going to stay in touch with them because they're going to be in our pipeline, whether they're buying in a month or a year or 3 years. You're working for today and the future's business. That's a big part for you to think of the activities. Even if it's not going to happen today, you want to source it and get in that lead from you so you still communicate with them. I love when people come back 2 years later and say, I'm ready now. We talked in, 1917, and now we're ready to move forward. And sometimes it's that you're building future business. So a lot of times I ask when they say, oh yeah, we want to buy here in Englewood or we want to buy in Northport, I always ask, so what brought you here? That's an open-ended question. That's not a yes or a no. So what brought you here? And notice my tone of voice and how I say it. That's a learned process. All right, because if I'm reading about what brought you here versus, so what brought you here? And then you get quiet because you want to find out. Say, well, I don't know, really. Well, do you have family or friends here? Well, no, we don't. Well, when did you originally come down? So you have multiple follow-up questions. Remember, Gary Keller says 2 things: stay in curiosity and ask questions 3 deep. Those are the 2 best things that Gary ever told me. Stay in curiosity. So step outside of ourselves, who we are, and then ask questions 3 deep. Because that's when you get the real answer. The first one, oh, do you have family friends? Yep. So what if I went on? Oh, so tell me about that. I'm kind of kicking back and listening. I want to know what brought them here. Why do they like it? What entrances them about it? Why are they excited? Because I'm going to try to fulfill what their needs are. I need to understand what their needs are. And we need to drag it out. Because people don't naturally just come out and say, well, I'm here because of this, and the part I love about it is this, and the part I don't like about it is this. They don't necessarily know those things yet. And then talk about the 3 questions. So then you have a conversation, you're drilling down, so you're going to ask about the bedrooms. That's the buyer's consultation. It's a whole other class. So if you haven't done that class, you haven't watched it on KW Connect, watch it multiple times. Because to me, when I really learned how to do a buyer consultation, and I really, I want to say mastered it, I just got really good at it, my conversion, you hear that air kicking on and on?
Does it all the
Yeah, so there's several different air conditioner units up there and it's switching between them. And that's what that sound is.
We're just hearing some funny sounds.
Yeah.
Can't be good. But
It doesn't sound good.
We're looking into our options, something.
Okay. So when we're, I'm sorry, I totally got off track. What was I talking about?
Watch
Buyer
buyers
consultation.
consultations.
Oh yeah, so the buyer consultations, when I really practiced it, and I really practiced it to to a wall. I did it in my office with a laptop and just did it. When I really drilled down and felt really comfortable in my tone of voice and question I asked, my conversion of buyers was dramatically different. Just dramatically different, which just kind of made me laugh. It was great. Because that's the first, a lot of times the first customers that you find are buyers. And especially in this market, you've got a whole bunch of them kind of waiting. And there's a lot of agents that are order takers that can't follow up with them, and you want to be that person. So whether you're closing this month or next year or the year after. So drilling down and really mastering that buyer consultation so that they really know, and you're going to hold them accountable to the things that they tell you, because you're going to recap what those things are. So we're looking at this and this and this. When I send them a link to a search online, I said, based on your parameters, we're looking at least 2 bedrooms, maybe more, at least 2 bathrooms, maybe more, at least 1,700 square feet or more, this age or newer. And I literally list that. I hold them accountable to that. So if they look at a property that's not in those parameters and say, well, what about this property? Oh, well, you were looking up to 300, this is 325. Should I look at that parameter up to 325? And what do? You zip your lip, right? Because what they're doing is they're missing everything else from 300 to 325. Well, we thought we could negotiate, and then that's when we're going to go talk about the market. But that's another story. So really have your buyer consultation down. And Tammy, if that's new for you, watch it online. I don't know if we have a video of one, Blake, or not.
KW Connect does that.
KW Connect. So watch that, do it, practice it with another agent, practice it to a mirror, get that down, because that's the difference. You can, I've seen where you can talk with 10 buyers and not convert one, and it's going to be your skill or lack of skill that makes them go somewhere else or has them stay with you. That's a big deal. And if you just learn that by a couple of hours of training and practicing, then that's what you want to do. I love doing that because it just was so much fun for them to go, okay, and that was just we were in a relationship with them. So the next conversation is about time frame. So talking about revisiting time frame, cash and financing. So say you're already working with someone that's been a buyer in your list, or you're someone new, you want to talk about today's market. So let me take a few minutes and talk about today's market. So that's kind of a script that you start out with. And it's going to be, they're going to go, yeah, it's a seller's market. It is a seller's market. So let's talk about your time frame again. So every time we're referring back to what they want to do, whether it's 1 month or 1 year, let's say they want to be in something before next winter. All right, so let's use that. So you want to talk about the time frame in today's market and explaining, and Katie talked a little bit earlier about that in today's market, we often have multiple offers on a property. In fact, we should kind of expect it. So when you're making an offer, like you're going to get it. So like when you're making an offer, anticipate there's going to be multiple offers. Are you okay with that? This is just today's market.
Okay.
Okay, so Blake gives an affirmative. And we're going to refer back to that. I understand that you want to be here for next winter. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And where are you from again?
Michigan.
Michigan. Oh, I'm from Connecticut. So I always refer, or I have a daughter in Michigan. I always refer back to something, and I go, and I've spent winters there. Now, I like the first snow, but after that, I don't. How about you?
I hate any snow.
Okay, so Blake's saying he hates any snow. The reason I'm doing that, I'm stepping back from my drill down, because normally, and Katie knows, my basic instinct is let's just drill down and get to this, right? But I'm stepping back because I'm talking, why is he making this effort to buy something here? What's driving him? So I'm now connected because I come from an area near there. I have a daughter that lives there that I agree. So we have some commonalities. So you try to find some commonality. What kind of, if you saw Tammy, what kind of car they're driving, you said, well, I used to have a Nissan, or whatever it is, you find some commonality. And then you start talking about that next process. So I understand that we want to get, does it matter whether we close on it next month or before December? And so we're drilling down a little bit on that. So we want to start looking now. And you get that confirmation. So you're going pretty slowly. You're going through these steps and you're having them confirm things all along. You're not rushing through. Because remember, we buy and sell houses every day or every week or every month. They don't. And I just talked to somebody that the last time they sold a house was 35 years ago in Michigan. No, in Connecticut. So they're stressed. They have a vision in their head how it's going to work, and that's not how it's going to work. So one of the best lines to say is, every state's a little different. So what am I doing by saying that? I'm validating, okay, well, they think it's this way. So I'm saying every state is different. In Florida, let me tell you how that process goes. So you're kind of laying it out for them so that they understand it. Because otherwise, what will they do? They'll get their back and go, that's not the way it happens, because they sold a house 35 years ago in Michigan. So this is where you're spelling it out. And this is also where you're getting validity. Why should they talk to you as opposed to the other 10 realtors that they talk to? This is where you're differentiating yourself and also helping them see the market. So in talking with them, you can explain that even in a market that is not this COVID market, that all home sellers typically won't even look at your offer without either what we call proof of funds, and that would be your bank statement with your account number blacked out. You know, and if you talk about it normally, that's fine. If they're aghast, and if you're aghast by it, that first freaked me out to show my bank statement to someone. Well, if you blank out the account number and you tell them that's what they're expecting, or your pre-approval mortgage letter. So you want to ask at that point. So you talked about getting a mortgage, is that correct? Let's assume they have, and let's assume that they don't have to sell their current house. So one of the things that you want to do is go through that pre-approval process with a local lender here. It doesn't commit you to work with that person. It doesn't cost anything. However, you have that pre-approval letter. So should we find the right house next week or next month or 6 months from now? So what am I doing? I'm not rushing them, but I'm saying, hey, it could be tomorrow or it could be 6 months. That's called a takeaway. So in communication of sales, that's called a takeaway. So typically, what do they call? They call it, I've heard this, commission breath. Agents get really anxious. Okay, I'm going to close this one and let's get moving forward. And I'll tell you what, the realtors that give us all of that name are that behavior. It's all about the wheeling and dealing. Let me close this deal and let me get commission. And the bottom line is we're much more consultative with them. We talk about what their needs are. And the takeaway is, hey, we may find it tomorrow or it may be 6 months. So by that, you're not pressuring them, but you're getting them ready for tomorrow. So you see that conversation of how you're going to talk about things, getting them ready for tomorrow, but then a takeaway and saying, or 6 months, but you're getting them lined up. It's creating a sense of urgency for them because typically they'll go, well, if the right one comes up, they're thinking, well, then they would see it, then they would go to a lender, then this would happen, then this would happen, and that just doesn't happen. They're not working at the speed of our process, so you've got to show them that speed. You've got to have that conversation. And you've got to be able to talk about it and then actually physically lean back. One of the things that I learned is because I'm pretty assertive, right, Jim? Pretty assertive, and I've had to learn to be less so and appear less so by physically leaning back and actually kind of relaxing, so that they don't feel as I'm focusing and getting forward, and they don't feel like I'm pressuring them for the tension of it. So I make a point to pause, lean back, cross my legs, kind of don't wait for an answer. So this is where the learning of practicing it in front of a mirror, your tone of voice is very important. It's okay to have notes. So if those are questions that you want to have and have notes, that's great because then you don't miss a part of it. And you're not worrying about what you're going to say next while they're talking. And I think when I was first learning to do things, that was kind of what I was doing as a newer agent. I was like, okay, I'm going to tell them this next. I'm going to tell them. I wasn't even hearing what they're telling me. I'm just like, okay, let me wait. Okay, now let me ask that question. All right, now they're answering me. Now I'm ready for the next question. So you want to listen and you want to take notes. So you want to talk about that time frame. And this is where you kind of talk about Okay, so once we find the right property and you have that pre-approval letter, we're going to be making an offer, right? And we're probably going to be in a multiple offer situation in any time in this market this year. And so that's the time frame they're talking about buying. So I'm letting them know, because they're thinking, well, maybe in August this won't be this way, or in October it won't be this way. We have a shortage of homes, and we have a higher demand of normal. And we're not going to solve that shortage this year. We don't know what the market's going to be in a month or 2 months or 3 months, and a lot of things affect it. What happens in the government? We have a terrorist attack. We have another COVID. There's lots of things that can affect it. The stock market can affect it, especially cash buyers. So we know that there is going to be this demand, so they understand that no matter what time it is. And I always share, we want to come in with our highest and best offer. Now, what might a buyer say to that?
I never paid full price.
Okay, so Jim's saying we never pay full price. In fact, we'll get immediate pushback because they're thinking we're talking commission bread. Oh, that realtor wants us to pay a high price and, just close it and make it easy. This is where, and that's anticipated. If they don't say it, they're saying it in here. I never pay full price. That's crazy. I'm not doing that. I don't want to be in a bidding war. And so one of the things that you want to be prepared is what they're thinking and have conversation about. Don't have answers. We're not having answers. We're having conversation. Because if they feel that you're like answering everything, have an answer for everything, they're feeling what? That you want to just keep moving forward. You're not really listening to them. So that's a great time for you to share. I understand what you're saying. And in a buyer's market, or even in a what we call a normal balanced market, I understand that. You typically might be working against one other offer or less. However, in today's market, I know people don't want to get in that bidding war, but depending on the community that we're looking at, the national statistics just came out today that nationally the inventory is 50% of what it normally is. I know in some of the communities that I work in, it's 10%. 10% of a normal market. That is absolutely blows my mind. So that's where you want to know what areas they're moving to, and you can show them. There's this many properties on the market. Last year at this time, there were this many properties on the market. So when they see statistics, it's not you telling them, it's you're giving them information. And it's coming from another source. So it's not you pushing them. And then suddenly you're looked at as a person that has knowledge. Then the tide kind of turns. You're earning your value with them. And that's a big part of what you're doing. Because you want them to go, I want to work with this realtor. I see the value in this person. They listen to me, they're sharing information, and they're giving me third-party statistics because they don't know to trust you yet. That third-party statistic is great. You can come out and say, yes, this is what it was in this area a year ago, exactly, and this is what it is right now. Now, I know you want to get out of Michigan, and you want to get down to Florida before next winter. So we're really going to keep an eye out literally every day for the right property for you. Does that make sense?
Does.
Yeah. So notice I asked the questions. You want to have questions in your mind that you're checking along the way. You don't want to have this whole conversation and then them not be with you. You want to ask questions along the way, like, does that make sense? What are your thoughts? Tell me about it. You want to have those in pause and be quiet. And remember, if they don't answer, ask the next question. Well, what are your thoughts about this? And I literally I'll do some hand motions. I'll do this. It means I'm pausing and waiting. Because you want to make sure they're coming along with you and they're not like, oh gosh, I'm going to listen to this realtor this whole time. I can't wait to get out of here. Right? And then I'm going to go on to the next person that talks to me that way. So you want to talk to them and find out what that process is. Then you want to talk to them. So you've done your buyer consultations. You're going to be doing the search and having that. Again, watch the video to get that. And then you're going to be talking about structuring an offer. Now, we're not even ready. Lake's gonna buy sometime between now and December. Why would I talk about structuring an offer?
Just in case.
Just in case, anybody else?
Convince them to buy now.
Convince them to buy now. You're preparing them. You're preparing them for the next step so that they know what to anticipate. I always say, tell them you're going to tell them, and tell them you told them. It's in our head, but they're absorbing so much, whether you're on a buyer consultation in person or on the phone, whether you're on a seller listing appointment, no matter what you're doing, is they're retaining about 10% of, you'll retain about 10% of what this is. So you want to go over it. So you want to prepare them so they know what that next step is. So when you talk about it and you're writing an offer, they'll go, I'll say, remember we talked a little bit about this previously. Let me recap it. So they're hearing it for a second time. It's a little bit easier. So we talk about how we make an offer, what the contract is like. We talk about deposits, how they're not required in the state of Florida, but they're customary. So this is where you really want to understand that contract and be able to verbalize it in a condensed form. Remember, you're dealing with different personalities and behaviors. So the driver or that D personality just wants to know the bottom line. The engineer that I met with this morning wants to tell me 3 times about it over an hour and 15 minutes. So that is, you've got to be ready to prepare to deliver the information the way that person wants to receive it, not the way you want to deliver it. So it means for the driver personality that you can condense that conversation. For the analytical, that you can go into deep detail and be comfortable in discussing it. You know, all the little, what can go right and what can go wrong. So that's your need to understand the contract and to practice verbalizing it to a mirror or a buddy or a friend or a family member so that you can go through it. This is a condensed version just explaining about when we make that offer, we make it in writing. Some people just say, yeah, I want to make an offer of $325 on that. Just let them know. Well, no, then I didn't do my job of explaining. We put it in writing that we do a deposit, but we don't have to do the deposit until the offer is accepted, usually in about 3 days. And that's when they'll ask about the deposits. You want to kind of share that information. Again, that's a contract class. You want to talk about as is with inspection times, that the contract's 15 days, although that's very difficult to get an offer accepted in this market with 15 days of inspection. So can you shorten it to 10? Could you shorten it to 5 or 7? Is it possible to get a home inspector in that time? You wouldn't want to shorten it and not be able to get a home inspector. Some people, is that a hand up?
Yes.
Okay, Blake has his hand up.
I just wanted to say we are having a contract class May 4th
Mhm.
at 2 p.m.
Great. So definitely, it's great to go to contract classes. I'll go to them every year, even though I teach them, to hear it from different people teaching it, the different questions that are asked in that class, because you want to really understand what that is and be able to verbalize it. You don't interpret that contract, however, because if you were interpreting that contract, you can share information. But if you were interpreting it, you would be practicing law, which is you're not a lawyer. So there's a very delicate line of how you communicate about that contract. And remember, on the last page, on the top of that contract, what's on it? Does anybody know?
Signatures.
Just above the signatures. This is a legally binding contract. If not fully understood, you may bring it to an attorney. And actually, I changed the wording, what I say. You may bring it to an attorney if you wish, or I can review it again. Do you wish to bring this to an attorney? And if they don't answer, I say, do you wish to bring this to an attorney? And if they say no, great, we move forward. And typically it's that, but I always make sure, and you want to make sure when you're delivering the contract, when you're doing it, that you do the same thing, that you are not discriminatory in any way, where you might explain a little bit more to this person than this person. So I always make sure to say that line, because I once had someone say to me after I did this line, well, I didn't know I could bring an attorney. I said, yes, because I say out loud
This is a legally binding contract. If not fully understood, we can review it again, or you may bring it to an attorney if you wish. Do you wish to bring it to an attorney? So being comfortable with that part of all of the contract and being comfortable talking about it. So you talk about the contract, you talk about submitting it, you talk about the inspection time. Sometimes they'll say, well, should I waive an inspection? And you can talk about the risk or the benefit. So what's happening with offers right now? Anybody want to share with me?
If there's no inspection period, that looks even more appealing to the seller.
Right, so Katie's saying if they waive the inspection. Yes, I've had it on some of my listings that the seller went with that offer because there was no inspection period, because that's a contingency. So they've gone with a cash offer with no inspections, which I don't think I could even buy a house without inspections. I don't think I could do it.
You personally.
Yeah, me personally. Yeah, I did a bank owned once, and I did the little house I renovated, and I had a 3-day inspection period, but it wasn't where inspectors were booked up. And I actually booked the inspection and I submitted it against 5 other offers. And I got it because I had a 3-day inspection, but I already booked the inspector. So don't do a 3-day inspection and think you can get an inspector in that time, because I don't think you can get in the market. Last month I did a 7-day inspection, and I got the inspector in there because I didn't book it in advance, by begging and pleading, and I got them in on the 7th day. Oh yeah, I was sweating it. So again, and you want to be comfortable with inspectors. Remember, you can't steer your person to one person, your customer to one person. You give them names of different inspectors. You can tell them they go on the internet or choose anyone they want. Here are some inspectors that my clients have used. So again, those conversations with them so they understand. So then they'll learn about inspections. What kind of inspections? Home inspections, septic inspections if there's a septic tank, pool inspections. You can go into mold or air quality inspections. And so you can kind of have these conversations up front, because then it's not so scary writing that offer, because you've already talked to them about it. And you're also already kind of have validity because you've explained it. Say, we're happy to coordinate those for you. These will be your expenses at the time of the inspection. And then they'll usually ask about the pricing. So what are they showing by asking questions along the way? You know, how much typically would an inspection be? Well, what would this be? Questions are what? They're buying signs. Questions are buying signs. So in that conversation, they're now getting comfortable with the idea. They're communicating with you. They now have you have some validity. You're earning maybe some trust, right? You brought the statistics about the market. So they're going, hey, I'm kind of connecting with this person. And then they're understanding the process that needs to happen. And then you can share about cash versus financing. So this is a really tough conversation, because Katie brought it up earlier, is that even with a pre-approval letter, are a lot of, so say we have multiple offers. So my highest in the last month of multiple offers was 21 offers. And so what does that mean for you as the listing agent? If you're the listing agent, you're reading 21 offers. So that weekend I read 1,000 pages. Did you think I did anything else that weekend? Oh, no. So on the buyer side, you've got to explain that you could have 1 or 2 other offers, or you could have a dozen other offers. And Mr. Buyer, in this case, I'm talking to Blake. Mr. Buyer, I want to explain to you that in the market for this year, this is kind of where we're going to be. All right. Yes. Can you speak loud so Tammy can hear you too?
Can you say highest and best offer? Is that acceptable right now?
Great. So the question is, can you tell your buyer you should make your highest and best offer? Yes, you can explain what offers are like, and they would be put side by side. And you can say, there's a couple of different things that the seller could do. And I always explain what could unfold. So the seller can look, they can't negotiate all offers at the same time, except they can accept one offer, They can negotiate one offer, or they can say, hey, we want the highest and best offer by this time. So sometimes the seller will say that, and sometimes they won't. And I also share with sellers this, so we're gonna flip to the seller side. Here's a tip. When you're talking to your seller or the owner of your listing, is you share those different offers to them of how they can react to it. And they go, well, I wanna do highest and best. And I say, that's great. I'll tell you the upside of it, and I'll tell you the downside of it, Mr. Seller. So we're going to make Katie the seller now. So I'm going to share the upside. So the upside is we're going to go back to these 5 offers and say highest and best, right? Because we want to get as much money for you as we can. However, I've experienced that some people, when you do that, some buyers go, well, listen, I made a really good offer. I'm ticked off and I'm not getting in this bidding war. And sometimes the best offer drops out. So I explained to my home seller, so on the side of a home seller, Katie's selling it, so that they're making the decision. We're here to give them the information, and we're here to help they make the decision, and we follow through on it. So we tell them the upsides of things and the downsides of things. So on working with the buyer side, I talk about, so in this case, Blake's the buyer. I'll go, Blake, the seller's going to do one of 3 things. They're going to just accept one of the offers that comes in, or they're going to look and counter offer, negotiate on that one offer, or they may come back to us and they may say highest and best offer, but they may not. So I think the thing is you want to go in looking the best you can. Let's give the best offer possible. And then I will go back to, we've looked at this house, we've narrowed it down for 3 months, and this house has really popped out to the top, right? The backyard view is private. You've got a fence for the dogs, right? You've got the home office. So what am I doing? I'm going back to the importance of this property. I'm giving him the parameter of what we've looked, that I'm not saying it, but these don't come along every day. I'm saying it in the ways we're having this conversation so that he sees the value. It's not, because it's very difficult when you know you're going to be against other offers and you go, it's stressful. I'll say at this point, does this pretty much check all the boxes?
It does.
Okay, so we know that the asking price is $300,000. A lot of times buyers will say, well, what would you offer? So what I say back to them is, so we know a lot of times that there's going to be offers above in this market. So what I suggest to you is make the best offer you're comfortable doing, and you won't kick yourself that you didn't go 5,000 more if you lose it. So this is a great time to say that, and working with buyers is just making sure that you won't kick yourself that you didn't go up that 5,000 or you didn't go up that 10,000. And if you're okay with that, then that's the offer we're making. So if you're saying at 300,000, if you lost it, you would have said, I would have gone 305. And then you wait because you let them process this. This is a whole different idea for them because they came out like Jim is like, I never pay full price for anything. Gosh darn it. And I'm not going to start now. Right? Because that's the immediate feeling. They're being squeezed right now, the buyers. It's very stressful. But we've already checked out when Blake wants to buy it. So we've had that buyer consultation. And how did we do that? By saying, well, would it work next month? And we can say next summer of 2022. Well, and so I kind of do an extreme thing, but I'd say it nicely. So they go, well, not that. Oh, okay. So when would you like to be in? I always make sure to do an extreme number because they go, oh, well, not that. Then they're starting to realistically, well, it's not any time. It's any time this year, anytime in the next 6 months.
You're kind
So-
of waking them up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because even if you're dealing with a couple, when they come in and talk to you, a lot of times they're giving different answers. They've had a conversation, but they haven't had the drill down conversation. You know, like the person that said, well, when something really good comes up, let me know. Well, what's good? What's good for you? Well, what does that look like? Well, how many, and you start digging down and doing that buyer consultation again. So you see how we're going back and that having that conversation and knowing to have that conversation, practice it. Because if you say, are you going to kick yourself if you didn't go 305 and you lose it? Do you want to think about it for a minute? Let me work a little bit over here. And I actually will give them, I'll fiddle with papers or something, give them about a minute or so. Say, have you thought about it a little bit? Because that's something hard to swallow. Yes.
So for people who need financing
Mhm.
and they've gotten the pre-approval letter and they have good income, they're ready to move on it, do they have a good chance of getting the house that they want right now? Or is the majority of people accepting cash offers above theirs?
Great question. So we're asking for those of you to hear that if they're pre-approved for a mortgage, are they losing out to cash offers? Often they are. So there's a couple of ways we can do that. So you want to have that conversation with them, that they're not even going to address it unless there's that pre-approval letter. And then also the challenge is, so say the house was listed at 300, we're going to use the same scenario, and say the comps were probably 280, right? Because in this market, it's appreciating so quickly. And so say Blake makes the offer at 307, right? And it's accepted. And so let's just say they accepted one with financing. We're going to go back why they would or why they wouldn't. Often it will not appraise to that. So let's go to that issue. So I've with my home seller have accepted an offer of financing, but they've waived the appraisal. Now the contract itself does not say it's contingent upon an appraisal. There are appraisal riders that you can do, but the contract says if they qualify or don't qualify. So you want to really define that. So if you want to make sure it's contingent upon appraisal, you add that. It wouldn't go through in today's market. However, say that Blake is buying it and he's putting $107,000 down and financing $200,000. So he's putting more than 20% down. You may say, Blake, are you okay waiving an appraisal and paying the 307, even no matter what the appraisal comes in at? But do not assume that that's okay to go. You then call up your buyer's lender and say, hey, Ms. Lender, I'm Jean Pressley Whittaker. I'm working with Blake and we're looking at a property. I know he's qualified up to 350. He doesn't want to go up to 350. We're looking at a property that's listed at 300. We're making an offer at 307. Can we waive, and will you let us, Mr. Lender, because not all lenders will do that. Will you waive the appraisal that you'll still do an appraisal, but it's not contingent upon, and if Blake needs to put more money down, that he can. Blake, are you okay with that? Mr. Lender, are you okay with that? Then you can write in, get the okay from Murray, our broker, that you're waiving any appraisal contingency, that it's not required in that contract. So on one of the properties, that's what we did. The buyer went, in this case, $25,000 over asking. We had multiple offers. It was financing, no contingency. And I, as a listing agent, called the lender for the buyer to make sure it was okay. And they waived inspections, and that they won that over a cash offer. Yes, Katie.
If a buyer is purchasing a home for $300,000, but they got a mortgage for $200,000,
Mm-hmm.
the home only has to appraise at $200,000, the loan amount, for the loan to go through, correct?
No. I thought that too when I was newer in real estate. It has to appraise for the purchase price, because if the sale was $300,000 and Blake was borrowing $200,000, and if it only appraised for $200,000, the bank is buying it with Blake, right? Blake's got $100,000 in, the bank has $200,000 in. And if he trashed the house, he has those wild parties every weekend, he and Brett, they do. 100 of us go over there, we drink, all this stuff, and they trash the house, and the house is now worth $100,000. that the bank is losing that difference of that money. It has to appraise. They want money over what they're loaning. Otherwise, they're loaning 100%, which would be like an FHA. It has to appraise to the sale price, not the loan. Just think about a conventional loan is an 80-20. The buyer puts 20% down and the bank puts 80% down. For just easy numbers, let's do 100,000. They're buying it for 100,000, which doesn't happen in today's world, bless you. And so the buyer's putting 20,000 down, the bank's putting 80,000. If it only had to appraise to 80,000, then the bank is giving 100% loan. They've got to give an 80% loan of the sale price and the appraisal price. So it has to be the sale price. And if it's less than, again, this is where that contract goes. Come to the contract class. Do we know who's teaching that class?
Sally Wagner.
Great. So Sally's teaching it. That's a great question to have that contract in front of you, because it does not say contingent upon appraisal in there. It's just contingent upon the buyer being able to get the mortgage.
And it's sales contract and listing agreement.
Yeah. So you really want to know those inside and out. And remember, you're not interpreting them, you're sharing information. So that's kind of the trick about making that offer. So if you're making that offer, you can explain to your buyer about it, talk to the lender with your buyer there and talking about it. However, I don't think you ever want to recommend waiving an inspection. And it's up to them whether they want to waive that appraisal and with a bank, because you could be paying, you know, it could be the house appraised for 280 and you're paying 307. And the buyer has to be okay with that. And the lender has to be okay with it. They have to be okay mentally and not go, well, Jim, you told me that we should do this and I'm so sorry I did this and you talked me into it. You're sharing information and then you're stepping back and asking questions. You're sharing what other people have done in this market to be able to have an offer go through. Because a cash offer, what does a cash offer mean? It just means that one contingency is released, the appraisal and mortgage, all right, that's released. And then it's just the inspection, because the only other contingencies is that there's clear title, which the seller has to give. So it's just the difference between cash and financing is just one contingency release. So if you explain to the buyer, if it's being presented, say, assume you're the owner of this property and you get an offer and one's cash and one's contingent upon financing. Even though you're pre-approved, something could happen. You could go to Las Vegas and blow $100,000 and suddenly not get approved. Yeah, Blake's there. So I use those extreme measures to kind of talk about that. So if that happened, then for the seller, suddenly you're a week before closing, they're realizing they're not closing. So how they're looking at the offer is, what's the offer with the least amount of contingencies? So we want to submit it. The other thing in working with buyers is I'll call the listing agent, if you can get through to them, and say, what's a good closing date for the seller? Is it 1 month or 3 months? So to find out how you can prepare your offer that still works for your buyer, but may be more advantageous for the seller. For example, I just had a listing where he wanted at least 2 months, maybe 3 months to be in the house before closing. And so this agent called me up and said, what would make it happen? And I said, as a listing agent, cash, over asking, big deposit, no inspection, 3 months to close. She wrote the offer. She explained it to her customers. This is what she said. They offered over, big deposit. They waived the inspection, and they gave us up to 3 months to close. So you just want to ask what would make it happen, because you want to find out, do they want a quick closing? Are they vacated? You know, do they want 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Remember, you need to do, if there's inspections, you need time for that. You need the title to be searched. So sometimes you can't close in 10 days or 2 weeks. You need like 3 weeks, especially in today's market. So different things to think of when you're working with buyers. This is where you really want to build a relationship with them and be patient with them.
Well,
And
with the 3 months there, wouldn't it have been smart to just go ahead and do
Oh, so Jim is asking on that offer, wouldn't it be smart for that buyer to have done the inspection? Absolutely. I represented the seller.
But they would have lost out maybe.
Yeah, would the offer have been as advantageous with 10 days for inspection? No, because now we would have looked at other offers that were over asking price and what were they offering. Now, but however, they gave us lots of time to close. That was an important thing to the client. So again, that was a smart realtor to call and say, what things could make this seller accept it? So you want to find out what's important to, if you've got the listing, the seller, and if you're the buying agent, you want to call that agent, the listing agent, and say, what are the important things for this seller? And if you can structure the offer like that as best as you can. The other thing I want you to do is understand the escalation clause. So Murray, our broker, has an escalation clause that is acceptable for us to use. We do not have one in our set addendums. On Tuesday's team meeting at 11 o'clock, he will be speaking about the escalation clause, and they will be uploading it to something that we can gain access to.
Probably a Google Drive.
Probably a Google Drive. So you really want to understand what the escalation clause is, and that's a whole nother understanding. And if you're the listing agent, you'll get offers with differing escalation clauses that different offices write. Don't assume you understand them all. So it's a little tricky. And an escalation clause is where someone makes an offer and the escalation clause says, my buyer will go up to this price in increments of 1,000 or 2,000 with documented evidence of other offers, not to exceed a certain amount. And I'm seeing them in offers all the time now.
It's spooky.
Yeah, it is spooky.
My parents just bought a lake house with an escalation clause involved.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's in there. So just in recaps, when the customer says, what should I offer? Make your best offer. And again, I wrote down, would you kick yourself if you lost this property for 5,000? Pause. For 10,000? Pause. For 15,000? Or would you kick yourself and have buyer's remorse? If you make this offer and you get it, will you then have buyer's remorse? And I pause there because think of the stress that the buyer's in right now. They're making offers that they wouldn't even make a full price offer. Now they're going above a full price offer, or they're shortening the inspection time, the stress. And I always talk to buyers and I say, this is a real thing. So when we're able to get an offer accepted the next night, that night or the next day, you will have something called buyer's remorse, because home buyers feel that they've paid too much. And guess what, Mr. Buyer? Sellers think they got too little. So it's that next 24 hours, you're going to have that knee-jerk reaction. I'm just letting you know now. So what did I just do? When they're at home that night and they're looking at each other, and Brett and Blake are going, oh my gosh, I think we made a mistake. How do we get out of this? That they go, Jean said, we're going to have this.
Or if you're my father, have a panic attack.
Yeah, so you have a panic attack. So again, prepare them about when you submit an offer. One of three things, and I do this, I hold up, one of three things are going to happen. One, they'll accept one, or counter offer one, or they'll ask for the highest and best. And again, make sure when you're making that offer, you have the right addendums, you fill out the information correct. What happens on multiple offers, I see a lot, there's missing addendums or the proof of funds aren't there. They're on my spreadsheet, but they're not even looked at because they don't have all the forms. They're out. How many buyers don't know that their realtors wrote kind of a cruddy offer and they're out because of that? Because when you have multiple offers, you're not calling each agent and saying, I don't have proof of funds, I'm missing the association addendum, you don't have the seller's disclosure to me. You're on the list, but you're out. So this sets you up to have the highest chance of achievement to get a relationship with your buyer, whether you're able to buy now or in the future, and having them narrow in that time. Is there anything that we haven't addressed that you've got a question on today? Yes, Miss Katie.
I think buyers that they're looking now, but really don't want to buy until the market has calmed down. I think we need to have a conversation with them about the market not slowing down this year and buying now versus 6 months from now. You're going to buy cheaper now than 6 months from now.
Yeah, it's that conversation with them up front that's saying, we don't have the crystal ball of what's going to happen. And I go back to when there was the bubble. We didn't think it could go any higher, and it did. We do know that here's the shortage. Here's the printout of how many houses were for sale last year at this time in this area and how many are now. And I tell them whatever percentage it is. And I say, we still have a shortage of homes for sale. We have a shortage of building new homes for sale. They put things on hold, and we have a higher influx of people coming down. We've got 3 groups. We've got the people that were moving down anyways. We've got the group that says, hey, if I'm going to be in quarantine another time, I want to have a Florida house. I don't want to be in Michigan or Minnesota, right? And then we've got that 3rd group. Hey, I can work remotely. I can live anywhere in the US. I'm going to come down. So we've got 3 times as many people coming down, and we've got 20% of the normal market. Do you feel, Ms. Buyer, that those prices are going down in the next 12 months? When you show that information, it's not you telling them they're not going to go down, because something could happen. We don't know. So don't be careful on, I remember years ago, we had a realtor who's no longer with us that said, oh, this is going to be worth 30% more next year. As soon as he hung up that phone, I was in there and I went, what are you doing? You don't know that. I don't know that. How could you know that?
There's agents now that are saying to their customers, I guarantee you, I can get you $300,000 for your house. And people are believing them.
And one of the things in a listing conversation is I show them that market. I say, that's not where we are. We're somewhere up here. We don't know where it is. The value is what someone's willing to pay for it. Based on this information, would you agree that we're in this range? And you wait for them to, it's not what a number that the homeowner pulls out of their head or a realtor pulls out of their head. It's what someone with cash in their hand is willing to pay. And that's that conversation. And when you go up against realtors like that, is when you do that and say, no one, so in my conversation, no one can guarantee you anything. However, let me show you what the market is, and let me tell you what I do when we put your house on the market. And then when you talk about the marketing and the exposure, and you're able to talk about it in large terms that the other agent isn't able to talk about, you have got that listing. And not at a discounted commission. I had someone tell me the other day, well, someone else can do it for this. I said, well, you should call them. But they called me today and I'm listing it tomorrow. Because I was able to show what I was able to do. And it's the ability to talk about the basics in powerful ways, which doesn't naturally come out of this. It's a learned process to be able to do that. I didn't like doing that at first. I felt like I was bragging on myself or patting myself on the back. And you're brought up never to do that. But you've got to learn to be able to show what you're doing. Or you've got a team of 120 agents behind you, and we sell 1,700 houses a year. Would it be a benefit to work with us? Zip your lip, wait for an answer. Yeah. So anything else? Well, thank you. We ran over our hour. Thank you very much. Thanks, Tammy. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you.
Thank
Judy.
you.